I say, shame on you. Shame on you for violating trust. The trust of the people of Europe, who expect you to fight for their interests, not your own. And for violating the trust of your colleagues here in the Parliament, who work very hard, honorably, truthfully, with decency. The only way we can rebuild trust is to fully support the investigation for the guilty to be brought to justice, and for us to root out corruption anywhere we find it.
2 minutes of truth, of bitter truth. And the bitter truth is that the European Parliament has done a lot of damage in Europe. It has been sending a false message. It represents European demos. There isn't, and there won't be any European demos. The Parliament infected Europe with shameless partisanship. And the infection became so contagious that it spread to other institutions, such as European Commission. The Parliament has abandoned the basic function of representing people. Instead, it has become a machine to implement the so-called European project, thus alienating millions of voters. To impose their monopoly with their fierce intolerance towards any dissenting view. No matter how many times you repeat the word diversity, diversity is becoming an extinct species in the European Union, and particularly in this chamber.
Corruption, a pervasive and corrosive force, extends its influence across the globe, including within the borders of European nations. This video examines the multifaceted nature of global corruption with a particular focus on the European context, exploring the root causes, consequences, and measures taken to combat this persistent issue. Corruption is a worldwide phenomenon, transcending geographical, cultural, and political boundaries. Its various forms, such as bribery, embezzlement, and abuse of power, pose significant threats to economic development, political stability, and social justice on a global scale. International organizations, including Transparency International, play a crucial role in monitoring and evaluating the levels of corruption in different countries. Now, in support of what was stated earlier, let us listen to the Executive Director of United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime, Mrs. Ghada Whaley, during this year's International Anti-Corruption Day conference.
2 decades ago, the international community made history by adopting the UN Convention Against Corruption, the UNCAC. The convention embodies the vision of a world where integrity prevails. By leveraging the UNCAC, we prevent resources from being siphoned away from public services and crisis response. We recover stolen assets and disrupt illicit financial flows. We cut off revenue streams for organized criminal groups and terrorist organizations. And we uphold the rule of law and promote public trust, strengthening the foundation for peace and security, human rights, and our efforts to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals. Through the Convention, the international community has taken major strides against corruption, establishing strong legal frameworks, reforming institutions, and bolstering international cooperation. As the guardian of the UNCAC, the UN Office on Drugs and Crime has proudly supported parties in honoring their commitments and helped more countries exceed. Today, the UNCAC is near universal, with 190 parties, a remarkable milestone that speaks to a shared global commitment. We must build on this milestone going forward.
Europe, despite its economic development and robust institutions, is not immune to corruption. The European Union and individual member states face challenges such as weak institutional frameworks, lack of transparency, and issues related to political financing. High-profile cases in several European countries have highlighted the need for a comprehensive approach to address corruption at all levels. The causes of corruption in Europe mirror those found globally. Weak governance structures, inadequate legal frameworks, and insufficient checks and balances contribute to an environment where corrupt practices can thrive. Additionally, issues such as the influence of organized crime, money laundering, and a lack of political will to address corruption exacerbate the problem. As stated, corruption is everywhere, even within the European Parliament. Let us now hear the President of European Parliament, Roberta Metsola, giving a rather strong statement with regards to the recent serious allegations on money laundering and corruption involving members of Parliament associated with the Gulf state of Qatar.
Make no mistake, the European Parliament, dear colleagues, is under attack. European democracy is under attack, and our way of open, free, democratic societies are under attack. The enemies of democracy, for whom the very existence of this parliament is a threat, will stop at nothing. These malign actors linked to autocratic third countries have allegedly weaponized NGOs, unions, individuals, assistants, and members of the European Parliament in an effort to subdue our processes. Their malicious plans failed. Our services, of whom I am incredibly proud, have been working with relevant national law enforcement and judicial authorities to break up this alleged criminal network for some time. Now, I am in politics, like so many of you here, to fight corruption, to stand up for the principles of Europe. This is a test of our values and of our systems. And colleagues, let me assure you that we will meet this test head-on. There will be no impunity, none. Those responsible will find this Parliament on the side of the law, and I am proud of our role and assistance in this investigation. There will be no sweeping under the carpet. We will launch an internal investigation to look at all the facts related to the Parliament and to look at how our systems can become yet more watertight. There will be no business as usual. But I must also say that while we can always look to increase deterrence and transparency, there will always be some for whom a bag of cash is always worth the risk. And what is essential is that these people understand that they will get caught, that our services work, and that they will face the full extent of the law, as happened in this case.
The consequences of corruption in Europe are far-reaching. Economically, it hampers fair competition, discourages foreign investment, and diverts resources away from essential public services. Politically, corruption erodes public trust in institutions and undermines the democratic process. Socially, it exacerbates inequality and fosters a climate of injustice. European institutions, national governments, and civil society organizations are actively working to combat corruption. The EU has established mechanisms, such as the European Anti-Fraud Office, to investigate and prevent fraud and corruption involving EU funds.
We know it's a global phenomenon. We know that they reach out easily, they operate across areas of borders, jurisdictions, competence. They don't care about any of that. They're very free. They're also very smart. They know, sadly, often even before we know, the weaknesses in our legislation, in the way it is implemented, the loopholes. When we are not good at working together, they know that and they use it. We also know that they're very adaptable. We see them taking advantage very quickly of any crisis. COVID was one of them. But really, any time that there is something happening, they either find a way of going around obstacles and seizing new opportunities for their business.
Furthermore, the Council of Europe, the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, and the United Nations have adopted widely recognized international laws and standards. Mechanisms, such as the Council of Europe Group of States Against Corruption, have been developed to monitor the implementation of these rules. The EU has gradually adopted laws addressing a range of corruption-related issues. These include a directive on the fight against fraud to the Union's financial interests, as well as directives on public procurement, whistleblowers, and money laundering. However, the legal framework created remains patchy. The lack of minimum rules on the definition of criminal offenses and various sanctions in the area of corruption are still missing important elements. Despite concerted efforts, challenges persist in the fight against corruption in Europe. These challenges include the need for more effective enforcement mechanisms, addressing systemic issues, and fostering a culture of accountability. The evolving nature of corruption, especially in the digital age, requires continuous adaptation of strategies and collaboration at the international level. In conclusion, global corruption, including its manifestation in Europe, demands a united and persistent effort to mitigate its impact. By understanding the root causes and consequences and implementing comprehensive measures, nations can work together to build transparent and accountable societies. The European experience provides valuable insights into the challenges faced and the strategies employed to tackle corruption, contributing to a global dialogue aimed at fostering integrity, justice, and sustainable development. If you found this overview insightful, we encourage you to express your support by liking, subscribing for updates, and sharing your perspectives. Your involvement contributes to the ongoing dialogue that shapes the trajectory of anti-corruption efforts. Stay informed, stay engaged, and let your voice resonate.